that Pakistan helped lead to that some in the Pakistani establishment helped with the Taliban's victory and its subsequent rapid takeover of Afghanistan. So perhaps the Biden administration will find a common cause to work with Pakistan in the future. But right now, it doesn't seem like Pakistan is a high priority for this administration, especially because Pakistan has gotten closer to China. It has gotten closer to Russia, both which are U.S. adversaries, even though Pakistan does occupy a strong strategic space and has indicated that it does want better relations with the U.S.
Okay. So, okay, another quick question, and that is that since we have understood that India is getting more relevant globally, so the pressure or what we call the influence of the great powers on India has reduced a lot. We have seen that back in when the Trump administration, when he asked for mediation between India and Pakistan and Kashmir. So we have believed neither the British nor the Americans nor the other any country can influence India for bringing on for the talk between India and Pakistan. With such kind of a situation, how do you see the peace of South Asia or the peace between India and Pakistan? Because we have realized over the period of time that things are getting deteriorated. Yes, over the period of time, there have been some good agreements, like on the line of 2003 ceasefire agreement, but the peace is at stake. So, how do you see that there is no third party which can bring India and Pakistan on the table, and there is no appetite between India and Pakistan to talk? So, how do you look? You see that in Washington?
Well, so I would agree with you on the fact that because Washington has chosen New Delhi over Islamabad, it does not have the same sway in Islamabad as it once did. And the UK is also gravitating more towards India, due in part to the UK wanting to sell a post-Brexit UK economy. I mean, so I would point to the fact that the UK and India are embarking on trade negotiations because that is part of the UK strategy. That said, the former where where great powers such as the US and UK don't have influence as much influence anymore. I point to countries such as Saudi Arabia and the UAE. I would note that Prime Minister Modi has really made outreach to the Gulf countries a part of his foreign policy strategy. The India just signed the trade agreement with the UAE. Saudi Aramco has massive amounts of investments within India, and so I think the Gulf countries will have an important role to play in mediating the conflict because they have strong strategic interests and commercial interests with Pakistan, but also now India. So I think that actually puts them better place to help India and Pakistan navigate any conflict, and also provides a neutral venue for example, the national security advisors to meet.
Hmm. So, Mr. Akhil, one more question, and that is, for example, India was a part of the Quad, but there is another Quad which we are hearing that is known as Quad 2, maybe where the Israel, India, America, and the UAE are going to be there. So, do you think that how this Quad 2 is going to how is going to Quad 2 is going to reshape the world, or particularly because India is getting into this part of the world, into the Middle East as well. So, how this the presence of India in Middle East you look while sitting in Washington?
Well, so the West Asia Quad has a lot of potential, and I think my old colleague Mohammed Salman coined this phrase, the Abraham Accords. And I think because not he didn't coin the phrase Abraham Accords, but he pointed to the fact that the Abraham Accords could open up the conversation between the U.S., UAE, Israel, and India, and I think that has shown to be a beneficial partnership because you have India and the UAE working together on trade. India and Israel have a strong commercial relationship and a strong defense relationship. Don't forget that Prime Minister Modi did visit Israel and got in Israel has, for example, water sharing technology, which is very important for India. And the US and Israel are strong strategic partners. So, I mean, there's a lot of potential on the defense and commercial relationship. And I think the India UAE FTA does open the pathway for increased commercial collaboration between India, Israel, and the UAE. And then, of course, the US can provide technology and expertise to help really strengthen this Middle East Quad. And I think there are a number of forces pushing those four countries together, similar to how China is pushing India, the US, Japan, and Australia together. So I think there's a great amount of potential, and I think the administration and others are looking for good ideas on how to take that to the very next level.
Well, one last quick question from you, and that is on China. We have been seeing that how the conflict between India and China is growing up. We have seen that how the Chinese are investing on the Indian backyard. So, how do you see the future? Do you think that there is a possibility of escalation while there is no one to mediate? The Americans want to bring India in Quad and even to this military wing. While Indians do not have anyone, the trust deficit is decreasing, and the Chinese are not looking India as a neighbor, but they're looking India as a economic partner, but they're looking India as a rival as well. So, how do you see that? What is going to happen between India and China? Do you think that there is some sort of a limited scale conflict? There is a possibility of that between India and China.
Well, I think that's India's concern. I mean, they believe that while the West's attention is focused on Russia and also on Taiwan, that this is potentially a chance for China to try to engage in its salami slicing tactics and gain more Indian territory. So they are concerned that this could happen in the spring or summer again. Don't forget, I mean, like we're about to approach the 2-year anniversary of the Galwan Valley clashes. So India is very concerned about that, and I think Foreign Minister Jaishankar has also made it clear that there cannot be a normal relationship until a return to the pre-April 2020 status quo has occurred. But whereas China is trying to portray it as, let's put the boundary issues separate and have a normal relationship, and we can continue to discuss the boundary. But the thing is, from the Indian perspective, China has violated every single one of the written agreements that existed to ensure that there wasn't going to be a conflict on the line of actual control. Those agreements have been violated, and so from India's perspective, there is no going back to a normal relationship until there is a return to the status quo. India also likely sees the fact that there is a coming Cold War between the US and China, and it has made its bet on the West, which has also aggravated China because China does not like the Quad. Of course, the Ukraine situation has shown some of the limits of the partnership, and it shows that these 4 countries will not always agree on everything. But I think India has made its bet on the West and has said, look, this is where we are making our bet because we want to provide an alternative to countries in the region. That said, it is difficult for India because, I mean, you've seen in Sri Lanka, India is playing second fiddle to China at some points there because you've got the Rajapaksas who have clearly gone towards China. India has stepped in to help Sri Lanka in its moment of need. Sri Lanka is potentially about to default on a sovereign bond, which is due in July. And so that's giving India a chance to reclaim some of its lost influence there. But China has great relationships with Pakistan. It has great relationships with Bangladesh. I mean, Bangladesh has probably been the best country being able to play India and China off one another. But as you said, China is making a significant amount of investments in India's neighborhood, and India sees that as a problem. So I think there is an ideological conflict and a geopolitical conflict coming up. And as the West's attention is turned towards Ukraine and even Taiwan, India is in the position where it is the only country with boots on the ground pushing back against Chinese forces right now. And it fears that it's going to remain in that situation.
Well, thank you very much, Akhil, for this deep, insightful analysis. Mr. Akhil Bari, he's working at the Asia Society Policy Institute as a Director, Strategic Initiative. Thank you very much, Mr. Akhil,
Thank you for having me.
Analysis.